Hello and welcome to Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're diving deep into study techniques with Sarah, our learning expert.
Hi, everyone.
We always hear about studying smarter, not harder, but what does that really mean?
Right, like how do we actually do that?
Well, today we're going to break it down, uncover some really cool techniques that are backed by research.
Exactly, because these techniques can really help anyone from students to, well, lifelong learners.
Yeah, anyone who wants to just get the most out of the study time, right?
Definitely.
So let's start by tackling this myth. I think many of us have probably fallen for it.
Okay, yeah, what is it?
How many times have we just sat there reading and rereading our notes and thinking, okay, yeah, this is studying.
Oh, yeah, countless times. I'm sure we've all been there.
But is it really studying?
Well, not really. It's more like hoping the information will just kind of, seep into our brains by magic.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But for real learning, for that to happen, we need to be actively engaged with the material.
That's the key, active engagement. So instead of just absorbing information, you're interacting with it.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
So think about making study guides or teaching the material out loud.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, or even coming up with your own examples.
Oh yeah, or drawing concept maps.
Exactly. All these things force your brain to really work.
So it's about being creative with how we process the information.
Yeah, and deliberate. It's not just about highlighting everything.
Oh yeah, that's me. I'm totally guilty of that.
We've all been there, but there are more effective ways to study. And speaking of deliberate, have you ever heard of the study cycle?
The study cycle. That sounds intense.
It's not as scary as it sounds. It's basically a framework that breaks down the learning process into 5 steps.
Okay, I'm listening.
So you have previewing, attending class or lectures, reviewing, then dedicated studying, and finally checking your understanding.
So each step kind of builds on the last one.
Exactly, and that leads to much deeper learning.
That makes sense. It's making me think about how I used to cram for tests.
Ah, the good old days.
Right. I always thought it was just part of the student experience.
Painful, but necessary.
Exactly. But you're telling me there's a better way.
Oh, there definitely is. Research has shown that spaced out studying is far more effective than cramming.
Really? I always thought cramming was just the way to go.
Yeah, a lot of people think that, but one study actually found that students who spaced their study sessions over several days, they remembered significantly more information than those who crammed everything into one session.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So how does spacing things out actually help us learn better?
Well, for one thing, it's a lot less intimidating to study for 40 minutes a day than to face a 4-hour cram session.
Right, I can definitely see that.
But more importantly, spacing gives your brain time to actually process and absorb the information. It's like planting a seed and giving it time to grow.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So we're giving our brains a breather between study sessions.
Exactly, and that allows it to make connections and solidify those memories.
And hopefully we won't be as stressed.
Right, because when you're not constantly stressing about cramming, you're more likely to actually sit down and study.
Yeah, that's so true. It's all about making studying feel less overwhelming, right?
Precisely.
And speaking of managing time, have you heard of the Pomodoro technique?
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
It's such a simple but effective way to break down your study time into focused intervals.
And those intervals can really boost your concentration and productivity.
So how does it work?
So you set a timer for 25 minutes of focused work, followed by a short 5-minute break.
Okay.
And you just repeat that cycle. It's amazing how much you can get done when you work in those concentrated bursts.
Love that. All right, ready for another technique that I think is just fascinating.
Hit me with it.
It's called the Leitner system.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
And it uses flashcards. And this concept called spaced repetition.
Right, so you're moving information from short-term to long-term memory?
Exactly. So imagine you have different boxes for your flashcards. You start by reviewing all the cards in the first box.
Right.
If you get a card right, it moves to a box that you review less frequently.
But if you get it wrong,
it stays in the current box, or even moves back to a box that you review more often.
So you're focusing on the cards that you're struggling with.
Exactly. And gradually spacing out your review of the cards that you already know well.
That's so clever. It's like a personalized training regimen for your flashcard.
Right. And there's a ton of research showing that spaced repetition can dramatically improve memory retention.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And it even works for people who have learning challenges like ADHD.
Wow, I wish I knew about this back in school.
Well, better late than never, right?
Right. And the best part is there are all these digital flashcard apps out there.
Oh yeah, like Anki and Quizlet.
They make using spaced repetition super easy and convenient.
So no excuses.
Okay, so we've covered active recall, spaced repetition, time management, all super valuable.
Definitely.
But what about incorporating visual learning into the mix?
Oh, visual learning is so powerful.
Right. I'm a big believer in visuals, diagrams, charts, even silly doodles.
Anything that helps make the information stick.
Exactly. So why are visuals so effective?
Well, our brains are wired to process visual information more easily than text. Images are just easier to recall. So when we incorporate visual aids into our studying, we're essentially creating mental shortcuts.
Well, I like that, a mental shortcut.
So these shortcuts help us to understand and remember complex information.
So visual aids help us create these stronger mental models.
Exactly. They allow us to see the relationships between different concepts and to organize information in a way that makes sense to our brains.
It brings the information to life. This makes me think about the concept of elaboration, going beyond the surface level and digging deeper by asking why and how questions.
Elaboration is key. It helps us connect new information to what we already know. We're building bridges between different areas of knowledge.
And creating a stronger network of understanding in our brains.
Exactly. And visual aids can be incredibly helpful for elaboration.
How so?
Well, when you draw a diagram to explain a concept, you're forced to think about the different components and how they fit together.
You're actively engaging with the material.
Precisely.
So we're weaving a richer tapestry of understanding by adding those visual elements and asking those why and how questions.
Exactly. And the more connections we can make, the more likely we are to remember the information.
It's like building a web of knowledge in our minds.
I love that analogy.
This is all making so much sense.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into even more cool techniques, I think it's important to talk about self-care.
Oh, self-care is essential.
Sleep, exercise, a healthy lifestyle. These all play a role in effective studying, right?
Absolutely. Your brain is like a muscle. You need to nourish it and take care of it if you want it to perform at its best.
That's a great point. So we need to make sure we're getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, and moving our body.
All of these things can have a huge impact on your cognitive function and your ability to learn.
It's like setting the stage for successful studying.
Exactly. When you're feeling your best, you're more likely to be focused, motivated, and ready to learn.
That's a great place to pause for now, I think. We've already uncovered so many fascinating techniques and insights.
It's been a great discussion so far.
We'll be back in a moment with even more tips and tricks to help you level up your study game. Welcome back to the Learn English Lab. We're still diving deep into study techniques, and I'm already thinking about how I can use these to learn better.
Yeah, I think we can all benefit from these ideas.
Before the break, we were talking about self-care and how it's so important for effective studying.
It really is crucial. You know, when we're stressed or sleep deprived, our brains just don't work as well.
It's like trying to run a marathon without any fuel, right?
Exactly. So besides getting enough sleep and eating healthy, what are some other ways to take care of ourselves while studying?
Yeah, what are some practical tips?
One thing that can really help is scheduling regular breaks into your study sessions.
Oh yeah, breaks are important.
Definitely. Just like our bodies need time to rest, our brains need downtime too.
Yeah.
So set a timer for every hour or so. Get up, move around, stretch, or just step away from your studies for a few minutes.
I know, I definitely need to do that more often. I get so caught up in my work, and then I end up feeling totally drained.
It's easy to forget about breaks, but when we push ourselves too hard, we're actually less productive.
So it's counterproductive.
Exactly. So give yourself permission to take breaks and don't feel guilty about it.
Your brain will thank you.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about individual techniques, but what about the environment where we study? Can that affect our learning?
Oh yeah, the environment can make a big difference.
Right. Some people need absolute quiet to focus.
While others prefer a little background noise.
It really depends on the person.
You know, I used to think I needed total silence, but I've actually found that I concentrate better with some ambient noise.
Like what kind of noise?
Oh, you know, like the hum of a coffee shop.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some people, that kind of white noise can actually help block out distracting thoughts.
Yeah, it's like it creates a more focused atmosphere.
Exactly. So it's not just about finding a quiet place, it's about finding a space where you feel comfortable and focused.
Whatever works best for you.
Right. And don't forget about the physical aspects of your study space.
Oh yeah, like what?
Is it well lit?
Mm-hmm.
Is your chair comfortable? Do you have all your supplies within reach?
Ooh, all those little things can really make a difference.
Definitely. If you're constantly getting up to search for a pen or a highlighter, it's going to break your concentration.
Totally. Speaking of breaking concentration, let's talk about procrastination.
The dreaded procrastination.
We all do it, right? Why do we put off the things that are important to us?
Well, I think it often comes down to fear or anxiety.
Fear of what?
We might be afraid of failing or feeling overwhelmed by the task at hand.
So you just avoid it.
Exactly, and hope that it'll magically go away.
Which of course it never does.
Never. So how do we combat this procrastination monster? Well, first we need to acknowledge those feelings of fear or anxiety.
So we're not ignoring them.
Right, and don't beat yourself up about it. It's normal to feel that way. But then we need to break down those big, scary tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time. Exactly. And those small steps, those little victories, they add up.
So celebrate those small wins.
Absolutely. Give yourself credit for every step you take in the right direction. You'll be amazed at how much more motivated you feel.
That's a great tip. And you know what else can help with motivation? Having a clear understanding of your why.
Your why? What do you mean?
Like, why are you studying in the first place? What are your goals? What are you hoping to achieve?
Oh, that's so important. When you have a strong sense of purpose, it's much easier to push through those moments of procrastination or self-doubt.
It's like having a compass guiding you.
Exactly.
I love that.
Okay.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to go back to active learning. We talked about things like making study guides and teaching out loud.
Yeah, those are great techniques.
Are there any other active learning techniques that you recommend?
Oh, definitely. One that comes to mind is taking notes by hand.
Really? I thought typing notes was better.
Typing can be faster, but there's something about writing by hand that really engages the brain.
How so?
When we write by hand, we're forced to process the information more deeply and to put it into our own words.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about getting the words down, it's about actively thinking about the material as we write.
Exactly. And along those same lines, summarizing is a fantastic technique.
Just summarizing.
Yeah. Whenever you finish reading something, take a few moments to summarize the key points in your own words.
That's a great way to check for understanding.
Right. And to make sure you've grasped the main ideas, it's all about being an active participant in the learning process.
Not just passively hoping that the information will stick.
Exactly. The more we can engage our brains, the more we'll learn and retain.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I'm already feeling more confident about my own study habits.
That's great to hear. And remember, there's no one right way to study. It's about finding what works best for you.
So experiment, try new things, and create a study routine that's effective and enjoyable.
And don't get discouraged if something doesn't work for you. Just keep trying until you find what clicks.
That's great advice. And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into effective study techniques.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more brain-boosting content.
And keep those brains firing.
Until next time, happy studying.
And we're back to the Learn English Lab. Wow. I can't believe we're already wrapping up this deep dive into study techniques.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun learning.
Doesn't it?
We've covered so much good stuff.
From active recall and spaced repetition to creating the perfect study environment, and of course, self-care.
Yeah, it's like we've unlocked the secrets to effective studying.
The ultimate study toolkit.
Exactly. But before we finish up, I wanted to circle back to something we mentioned earlier about finding your why.
Oh, yeah. That's a crucial one.
You talked about how having a clear sense of purpose can be so motivating.
Right, especially when we're struggling with procrastination or feeling a little doubtful.
So can you talk a bit more about that? Why is finding your why so important?
Well, think of it like this. When you really know why you're studying, when you have a vision of what you want to achieve,
Yeah.
it's like having this guiding star, you know.
It gives you direction.
Exactly. It gives you a reason to keep going, even when things get tough.
So we're connecting our studies to something bigger than ourselves.
To something that truly matters to us.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And that purpose can be anything, right?
Oh, absolutely. It could be about landing that dream job or just expanding your knowledge.
Or maybe just becoming a more well-rounded person.
Yeah, exactly. The key is to find what really lights you up and let that fuel your learning journey.
I love that. It's not just about cramming information into our brains.
Yeah.
It's about connecting our learning to something meaningful.
Right. It's about personal growth and fulfillment.
That's so important. So if we're feeling stuck or unmotivated, taking a step back and asking ourselves, why am I doing this?
It can make all the difference.
It can rekindle that passion for learning.
Exactly. This has been such a fantastic conversation.
It really has. I've learned so much from you today.
I'm glad to hear that. And I hope our listeners have too.
I'm sure they have. So before we sign off, I just want to emphasize one key takeaway.
Okay, what is it?
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to studying.
Oh, yeah, that's so important.
It's about finding what works best for you.
Right. We've explored so many different techniques, but it's up to each person to experiment and find what clicks for them.
What resonates with their learning style and preferences.
Exactly. So mix and match, try new things, and create a study routine that feels good to you.
And don't be afraid to make adjustments along the way.
Learning is a journey. It's not a destination.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, even small changes can make a big impact on your learning.
Don't underestimate the power of small steps.
Well said. And to all our amazing listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into effective study techniques.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you all.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more brain-boosting content.
And keep those brains learning.
Until next time, happy studying.